uh, characteristics, what we were discussing, characteristics over here. Finally, centralized decision making. Then the government has a decision to decide the way of allocating resources. They are the one making decisions compared to what you call, they don't give any chance to others, right? So the a command or planned economy occurs when the controls major aspects of the economy and economic production. In a command economy, it is government that decides what to produce, how to produce, for whom to distribute goods and services within the economy based on the social welfare. Command economies were often associated with political system of communism. Of course, communism is considered, that is the, uh, we can say, the core concept in all command economies. Thereafter, duties of a government. duties එකෙන් පස්සේ government එකේ තියෙනවා protection of economic and personal rights, regulation of industries and businesses, provision of goods and services, redistribution of income, making rules, regulation, and constitutions. So, මේ duties ටික command economy එකේ ඇතරම command economy එකේ විතරක් නෙමෙයි market economy එකෙත් තියෙනවා. And it's a common stuff. So the duties of a government. So the government එකක් ඉන්නවනම් it actually it government represent everyone, right? No discriminations. It represent or the provide all the facilities for entire society. That's how protection of economic and personal rights. Industries and everything are regulated. A regulation campus if there is a sole proprietor supplying a good with a monopoly. Monopoly කියලා කියන්නේ only one firm. Then Microsoft කියලා අපි ගමු example එකක්. A Microsoft product එක sort of a monopoly නේ. More than, I mean, in all the countries in the world නේ, use Microsoft. තව පොඩි පොඩි දේවලු තියෙනවා, but about 70% of market share, above 70% goes to Microsoft in that industry software. So once Bill Gates decided to make a software a few years ago, it allows only Internet Explorer. Other browsers are or browsing engines are completely blocked. The system maker Microsoft එකලගේ market share එකත් වැඩි. හැබැයි Chrome එහෙම නැත්නම් තව තියෙන ඔය Firefox ඒ වගේ browsers වලට engines වලට enter වෙන්න බෑ. ඒක install කරන්න බෑ. එතකොට Internet Explorer විතරයි. එතකොට ඒ වගේ system එකක් හොඳ නැහැ නේද? ඒ කියන්නේ එතකොට එයාගේ company එක විතරයි run වෙන්නේ. අනිත් businesses run කරන්න බෑ. එහෙම opportunity එකක් දුන්නේ නැත්නම් ඒ software. එතකොට මේක investigate කරලා ඒ government එක මේක release කරන්න දුන්නෙත් නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ fine එකකුත් තිබුණා. It is not, it simply it says limiting competition. So such competition should not be restricted. ඒ වගේ regulations හැම එකක්ම government එකෙන් කරනවා. Provision of goods and services whenever it needs. දැන් මේ දවස්වල COVID වගේ එකක් ගත්තොත් එහෙම, of course government has to play a vital role. නේද? නිකම් මිනිස්සුන්ට නෙමෙයි. So the government should work lot. They should give all the facilities. එතකොට දැකලා ඇති නේද? Hospital beds, this and that, everything are supplied by the government. Redistribution of income. Simply the income inequality. So the income differs. You can say income changes from person to person. Income redistribution should be there. Otherwise, people will not have. People will have a sort of a unfair distribution. In other words, some people are enjoying the life, some people are suffering the life. There is an income gap between the rich and the poor. අපි අන්න ඒකට කියනවා redistribution of such a situation should be overcome. අන්න ඒකට අපි කියනවා redistribution of income. So government collect more taxes from the rich and such an amount is redistributed on the poor. Next one, making of rules, regulation, constitutions තමයි ඔක්කොම ටික government එක implement කරන්න ඕන. Rules හදනේව, regulations, constitutions for the sake of general public. On the other side, functions of price in the command economy. The price එක command economy එකේ නෑ කියලා මම කිව්වනේ. නේද? price mechanism එක නෑ. Price mechanism has no task. Earlier, prices had a vital task to determine the way of allocation of resources. So make the resources to allocate කරන්නේ government. Government is decide කරනවා hospital එකට beds කොච්චරක් ඕනද? එහෙම නැත්නම් මොකක් හරි මේ කාලේ government එක resource allocate කරන විදිය. හැබැයි private sector එක උනා නම් ඒගොල්ලෝ decide කරන ඒගොල්ලෝ profit එක වෙන්නේ. Government එක බලන්නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ wealth එක වෙන්නේ. Right? But government should also concentrate the price in some cases, especially the products what they have produced. They want to determine the value of the item what they have produced. As well as government has to decide the wage or the cost of wage, or we can say that all government workers should earn particular amount. It is determined by the government, right? The price is required in that case, as well as prices are required to determine whether there is a surplus or deficit. I mean, in the government's finance, government accounts, right? Here, first one, note down. To determine the value of goods, determine the value of goods produced by the government. Next one, to determine the wage rate for workers. Next one, to determine the surplus or deficit involved in the government finance, right? After this, we'll start discussing advantages and disadvantages of command economies. තමයි advantage disadvantages ඔය වගේ දේවල් for exam එකට හැමදාම වගේ අහන questions ටික ඒවා ටික හොඳට memorize කරගන්න. ඒතර මේ command economy ගත්තයින් පස්සේ ඒකේ තියෙන advantages, especially the government decide what kind of good to be produced. Even government wants to provide large number of employment. Then අපි ගමුකෝ ඒක best example in government in Sri Lanka. I mean, when you go somewhere in government offices, you have seen lot of people are involved, or we can say working in such a organization. But in private sector, of course, very little people, comparison, very little number of workers. Government එකට පුළුවන් තරම් jobs දෙන්න. They want to give many jobs for the people. What is the target? For the wealth of general public. As well as whenever private sector wants to exploit consumers. අපිට ඒකට කියනවා consumers ලගින් වැඩිපුර price එකක් ගන්න ඕන. අපි example එකකට ඔය ගිය දවස් ටිකේ තිබුණා Saitem කියලා problem එකක් නේද? Saitem it can create, it can produce doctors to this system. So ඒක තමයි කොල්ලන්ගේ තිබිච්ච process එක. But it was a huge matter. Then the government decided to take over such a business. ඒ විදිහේ businesses තියන් යන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ. So they will prevent that kind of businesses. In other words, when there is a private sector production only, then government will overcome such a matter by the by can say the purchasing of such a business. So ඒ විදිහට මේ advantages තියෙනවා මේ market මේ system එකේදී. එතකොට මේ market එකේදී වැඩිපුරම තියෙන්නේ we can say somewhat essentials for the people, right? People are seeking some essential goods. It is supplied, but some goods are not there. Actually, some people may need luxurious stuffs. These are supplied by little. Private sector private sector again a very good supply කරන්නේ luxurious stuffs for the purpose of profit. But when we look at the government sector, they provide essential things for the wealth of society. As well as disadvantages. The system එක අච්චර productive නෑ. ඒ කියන්නේ coordination problem එකක් තියෙනවා. They don't know how to solve the matter, how to overcome the excess demand to excess supply. In some cases, goods are too much. In some cases, goods are too less. Total consumers la suffer වෙනවා. අන්නේ problem එක solve කරන්නත් government එක මේ system එක use කරනවා. Government use කරන්න පුළුවන්. But the private, with the government occurs, they have no way to determine how much of goods are needed and how much of goods should be supplied. The coordination problem එක ලොකු problem issue එකක්. They don't know how much of goods to be supplied. එතකොට market එකේ මොකද තියෙන්නේ? සමහරවිට shortage එක, සමහරවිට surplus එක. It would be a matter in this system. Okay, Imara, no problem. I will send you. In online classes, somewhat needed problems. I think. Right, no problem, Imara. Right. Enable to respond to consumer preferences. The may market එකේදී consumers ලට ඕන දේ නෙවෙයි supply කරන්නේ. Then government එක decide කරන්නේ මොන විදිය මොන product එකක් ඕනද කියලා. Consumer sovereignty කියන එක මේ market එකේ නෑ. ඒක problem එක. Then democracy and liberty, freedom කියන එක. There is no any freedom in this system. So no, it is quite difficult to criticize the government. They can't go against, or people can't go against the government, because that is the place where decisions are taken. So it's central decision. So central decision කියන එකත් මේ market එකේ තියෙන issue එක. As well as bureaucratic, huge administration cost implementing these processes of planning are completely a mess, somewhat a problem in this system. Even environmental degradations. If the government, last time the සාමාන්‍ය government එකක් environment එක protect කරන්න ඕන නේද? හැබැයි ඊදවස් ටික අපිට නිකන් ඇහුණා මෙහි ඔසිංහ රාජ්‍යයේම නේද? එක development plans වගේක් තියෙනවා. එතකොට they are going to cut trees or particular development in such areas, environment is damaged, criticisms වගේක් තිබුණා. එතකොට අන්න ඒ වගේ issues තියෙනවා මේ government එක විතරක් නම් තියෙන්නේ. Environmental degradations. they do not concentrate environmental protection always, because government has a power to decide everything, as well as collapse of or quality control. They do not concentrate quality of the product. The private sector got time pass, they are supplying goods line of properly. Quality is somewhat high. They want to increase quality as much as possible. They know if they can't what you call absorb number of customers through the provision of quality goods, they will not have a market. Their market share goes down. Therefore, they try to increase the quality of the product always. But in this system, quality is not considered much. Actually, they do not consider all. Right.
Advantages of command economies. 1. Supporters of command economies argue that it enables the government to overcome market failure, inequality, and create a society that maximizes social welfare rather than maximizes profit. 2. Command economies can prevent abuse of private monopoly power. 3. Command economies can prevent mass unemployment. 4. Command economies could produce goods which benefit society and ensure everyone has access to basic necessities. Disadvantages of command economies. 1. Government agencies usually have poor information about what to produce, coordination problems of demand and supply. 2. Unable to respond to consumer preferences, absence of consumer sovereignty. 3. Threat to democracy and liberty. A command economy creates a very powerful government, which limits individuals' rights to pursue economic objectives. Lack of freedom. 4. Bureaucratic. Command economies tend to be very bureaucratic, with decisions held up by planning and committees. High administration cost of implementing planning. 5. Environmental degradation. 6. Collapse of quality control. Mixed economy. There is a combination of market economy and centrally planned economy.
Right. Next one, mixed economy. So it is a next system that we should concentrate. Market economy example centrally you can say USA as a giant in the world, best example for the market system. Then the command economy, North Korea is an example. Then the mixed economy, in here we will come across many examples, including Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a mixed economy. Then it's quite easy to explain because we have many experiences, especially in the mixed economy. The system is controlled by both private and public sector. Therefore, it's a combination of market economy and a planned economy. Therein after, resources are also allocated by the price mechanism and the government, right? That's how mixed economy exists. In the mixed economy, government and private sector, somewhat competitive. The market economy USA ගම්කෝ USA එකේ private sector එකේ production එකක් විතරයි තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට government එකේ task එක තමයි මේ rules and regulations implement කරන එක, මේ economy එක control කරන එක තමයි ඒ system එක. Government එකේ task එක. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ production එකක් නැහැ. There is no government production in the US. But when we come to Sri Lanka, like a mixed economy, private and public sector is competitive. We have government schools as well as private schools, sort of a competition. Not only that, in many examples, hospitals, private sector has a competition, so among other private sector firms plus government sector. So the market mixed economy ke private ke public sector we can say somewhat allocating resources for the wealth of consumers by the government as well as private sector concentrate profit or self-interest. එතකොට අර මාකට් ඉකොනොමි එකේ තිබිච්ච ෆීචර්ස් ටික කමාන්ඩ් ඉකොනොමි එකේ තිබිච්ච ෆීචර්ස් ටික මේ දෙකම මෙතින්ද යූස් කරනවා. Right? So then I added there is a combination of market economy and a central planned economy. Resources are owned and controlled by both private and public sector in the mixed economy. Therefore, resources are allocated by both price mechanism and the government in order to find answers for basic economic problems. පුතා මෙතන basic economic problems අපි discuss කළා, what to produce, how to produce and for whom to produce. So මේ economic system වලදී වෙන වෙනම මේ economic questions ටික නැත්නම් solve කරන විදිය අපි study කරන්නත් ඕන. හරි. Mixed economy may have distinct private sector where resources are allocated primarily by market forces such as grocery sector in Sri Lankan economy. Mixed economy may also have distinct public sector where resources are allocated mainly by the government, such as defense, police, fire services. In many sectors, resources are allocated by a combination of markets planning, such as healthcare, which have both private and public sector provision. මේක දාලා තිනවා තව එකක්. මම ඉස්සෙල්ලා කිව්වා private and public sector ලොකු competition එකක් තියෙනවා කියලා. In addition, government only has defense, police, fire services, as same as systems in, we can say, market economy. So market economy එකේ government එකේ task එකක් තියෙනවා. The police, defense කියන ඒවා government එකේ විතරයි තියෙන්නේ. Private sector එකේ එහෙම අපිට service එකක් හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ නේද? එතකොට ඒ වගේ ඒවා only for the private, say government sector. Then we have such a competition between, in certain industries, public and private sector. Then after, characteristics of mixed economies. Resources are owned and controlled by the private and public sector. Enterprises are run by private and public sector. Price mechanism and the government attempts to allocate resources, scarce resources. Next one, profit is a major incentive for the private sector, while social welfare is a major incentive for the government. There are both private and public sector employment as well. Right. This is how we will realize characteristics of mixed economies. Right. The doubts මොනවද තිබුණා කියන්න බලන්න. ඒ lesson එක අපි මේකත් එක්ක ඉවර කරලා අපි තව එකක් ඔයාලගේ notebook එකේ ලියා ගමු. එන අපේ notebook එකේ මෙන්න මෙහෙම basic economic problems. uh, market economy, command economy, other side mixed economy. Here, the first question, what to produce? ඒකට මෙතන ඉස්සරහින් ලියා ගන්න market economy එක the private sector concentrates a relative concentrate the relative prices concentrate relative prices in order to solve this problem. Solve this problem. First up. Therefore, for the same, therefore, the private sector decide to produce goods based on the self-interest, based on the self-interest. Right. Then the command economy, the government produces goods and services based on the social welfare, based on the social welfare. Right. In the mixed economy, you add here Private sector produces goods for the self interest, while the government produces goods for the wealth of the society, for the wealth of the society. Right. After that, you can separate, then decide, then you can start writing the second one. So you can write one more thing here. This is also called problem of allocation. This is also called problem of allocation. Here, how to produce. So this is also called problem of production. Problem of production. Right. Then you will add such a description under the market economy or the way of solving this problem. Note down, the private sector produces goods and services by considering lowest production technique. Lowest production technique. Under the command economy, the government produces, sorry, government, uh, yes, the government produces goods and services by using a socially efficient Production technique. Production technique. Next one. The private sector concentrates most efficient and cheap. Most efficient and cheap. Production technique. While the government concentrate government concentrate a technique for the production of goods for the wealth of consumers, for the wealth of consumers. Right. තව එක question එකක් තියෙනවා. එකත් අපි යමු. The third one and the last one, for whom to produce. This is also called problem of distribution. Problem of distribution. Right. Note down over here.